That's us on 10. So yeah, morning everybody. I can see the chats. There's still people coming into the chat. So yeah, thanks very much for joining us this morning for our Excel is Killing Your Business event. The event's going to be focused on the risks and limitations of Excel and some of the Microsoft solutions that you can use that can better support your business. So there's just a few things to go over before we kind of kick off. So it's just to let you know that the session is being recorded and we will be sending a copy of the slides and the recording out after the event. You are on mute at the minute, so if there's any questions that you do have, we encourage you to use the chat functionality and we'll do our best to answer any questions that you might have. So yeah, that's pretty much the kind of main things to be aware of. And what I'll do now is hand you over to our team of experts led by Graham McLean, who will be running the session. Thank you.
Morning. Thanks, Opash. So I'm Graham McLean. I head up the modern workplace practice for Bridgeall. And today I've got Josh Giles, a Microsoft 365 solution architect in my team, and Umar Ali, one of our technical architects, and we'll be taking you through the event today at various different stages. There'll also be one of the presenters manning the chat when we're not presenting, so feel free to post any questions in the chat as you go along, if there's anything you see or you want to pick up with us. We'll also try and pick up any additional questions at the end in a Q&A session once we've finished the presentation as well. So the way we're going to run the session today is we're going to touch a little bit on the risks associated with relying on Excel. So just things that might happen, popular things that we see, and then we'll have a look at some of the kind of common use cases as well for Excel. And then we'll look at the alternative Microsoft solutions, and then finally kind of how and when to use the alternatives. And as I say, we'll wrap up with a Q&A session at the end as well. So first of all, just a bit of an introduction about Bridgeall. We're based in Glasgow, established in 2002. And we tend to work across a number of different kind of pillars. So we have the Modern Intelligent Workplace pillar, which I head up, and that really contains everything to do with SharePoint, Power Platform, Power Automate, all the kind of Microsoft 365 tools, and Dynamics as well. We then have a managed IT services and support function, who deal with the more kind of Azure infrastructure, kind of managed IT, so managing laptops, desktops, application support as well, and we have a product section managing kind of a couple of products, Smart Crowds, a kind of innovation platform product, and Trevi, which is a specific product for the water market as well. We also kind of over the top of that have application, data and AI practice, so developing applications from scratch using kind of bespoke .NET development, and looking at Power BI and building modern data platforms, etc. So across all those pillars, we tend to get involved in a number of different areas. That could be advising companies on where they are just now, where they want to get to, what are the kind of best options, what are the best steps to move forward, implementing solutions. So how do they actually implement these solutions and how do they take advantage of them? And as I say, support, which I've already touched on, so providing that kind of support to the end as well, any issues or whatever, or any advice that you need as to how to get the best use out of these. So we're a 10 times Microsoft Gold partner, and we're also one of 26 worldwide Microsoft Content Services preferred partners. On the Microsoft 365 side, what that gives us is it gives us a good access to Microsoft kind of engineering team out of Redmond to be able to see what's coming down the line with Microsoft 365 and be able to kind of look at the latest and greatest technologies and kind of help them shape that up a little bit as well. So that's things like Microsoft Viva and SharePoint Syntex that you may have heard of. We're also ISO 9001 and 27001 certified. So just looking at some of our customers as well, you can see from that list there, we work across both private and public sectors, but we also work across a number of different industry verticals. So, manufacturing, housing, national government, utilities, etc. So we've got quite a kind of wide variety of experience across a number of different industry sectors. So moving on to today's topic then, why do people always start with Excel? Why is it the kind of tool of choice? I suppose if we think about it, there's probably three kind of main reasons there. From a usability point of view, the majority of people in an organisation, they know how to use Excel. It's a ubiquitous tool. They know what to do with it. Maybe have different levels of technical skill with it, but they know and understand how to use it. It's easy to access. So, as you say, it's a kind of ubiquitous tool on people's desktop. It's there for most people. It's easy for them to kind of pick up and use. And then it's cheap, relatively cheap, and it's on most people's desktops. It's easy to get into, so it's easy to kind of just jump into. It's an easy learning curve, to start kind of plotting data on there. So what are the risks that, if we just start with Excel, what kind of risks do we see? So there's been a number of obviously high profile issues with Excel over the years. We all heard about the COVID-19 one. That's the standout kind of case where Excel has gone badly. So using an old file format, the template could only handle 65,000 rows of data instead of the newer kind of 1 million plus rows that you get with the XLSX format. And then because those test results created several rows of data, it meant that when they reached a limit, those other cases were effectively falling off the end as well. There's been a couple of other ones which we picked out. London 2012. So they managed to sell 10,000 extra tickets for the synchronized swimming event just by putting the wrong figure into an Excel spreadsheet, and that being allowed in there, and there not being any validation. I'm not too sure. The news story doesn't quite say what happened when then those 10,000 people tried to turn up and take the same seats as the initial 10,000 people, but I can't imagine that went too well. So, and then the third one was just JP Morgan, trying to use Excel to work out a kind of value at risk model. And I think they really were just getting to the extent of what they were doing with Excel. They were using copy and paste to copy formulas and things across. And then they had kind of increasing pressure from traders to meet deadlines as well, which didn't help. So a kind of perfect storm there of being under pressure, trying to move data from one spreadsheet to another spreadsheet and trying to tweak a model slightly resulted in formulas and things just not working for them. So a few examples of things that have not gone too well with Excel. And I think the point here is not that by moving away from Excel everything's going to be fantastic. It's just making sure that you think about what's the right tool for the job. Starting the kind of COVID-19 results in Excel, if you look back at it, hindsight's a great thing, but it doesn't seem like that's a sensible place, to start a system for something that's going to take that scale. The London 2012 one sounds like you probably wanted something that was able to detect the range and be able to say, well, actually, if it's over 10,000, then that's not applicable. That's not a valid input to put in there. So we're going to run a wee bit of a poll in the chat just now, just to ask how reliant you all are on spreadsheets in your own organisation. So hopefully all being well, the poll will appear in the chat window for you, and may also just pop up in the screen for you as well. we go. So yeah, what we're just looking for here is just to kind of gauge how reliant you are on spreadsheets. So, you know, 1 being not very reliant at all, and 5 being kind of extremely reliant. You know, you use them day to day, or they're kind of embedded in your business. Okay, so hopefully you can see once you've voted, you should be able to see the responses kind of moving around as everybody responds. I think we're kind of more at the top end of the scale, the 3s, 4s and 5s, which, you know, is to be expected, I guess. It's just interesting to gauge. Okay, so just moving on to have a look at some of the aspects of Excel that you know, give some danger, I guess, to you know, and give some risk to using it as a model. So first of all, data security. You know, the wider point here is that spreadsheets aren't really that easy to keep track of. You can put validation rules and restrictions on cells, but it's quite difficult to maintain, and it's quite clunky. It's difficult to get a full kind of audit trail, you know, of all the changes that have happened over time. You're also heavily reliant in organisations on, you know, users not deleting the spreadsheet, because it, you know, that is the one kind of source of the truth, if you like. So if you think about it, there's quite a big risk there of, if you've got spreadsheets that are tracking financial information or whatever, you know, there's a risk that somebody could inadvertently or maliciously delete the spreadsheet. And obviously you could say, well, we've got backups and things, but the impact on your business would be quite high there as well. And obviously the other thing about spreadsheets is people just being able to, you know, make a copy and a new iteration of the spreadsheet. So, we had version 1 and you were using version 1, but unknown to you, somebody's created a version 2, and version 2 has now made its way halfway around the organisation. And so it's difficult to keep in sync and keep on track of what's happening. And then from a productivity point of view, you know, people often have to combine data and spreadsheets. It's a very time-consuming exercise for people to have 2 spreadsheets and move the data from one to another. You can get manual copy and paste errors or transposing errors as people are moving things across, and maybe having to report different units or report it at different things. And then just on the scalability side as well. So obviously the newer format has got a higher row and column limit, so it handled just over 1 million rows of data. But if you think about that, a spreadsheet of that size is going to be pretty large. It's going to take a while to load. You might want to switch off, you know, kind of dynamic calculations at that size, because it is so large, it takes so long to load, and that then means that you're having to kind of calculate it at the end. You know, so it becomes a bit unwieldy. I guess the other thing is, it's quite hard at that size when you start to add all that in. It's quite hard to kind of see the wood for the trees with all the rows and the columns. And we'll show you later on how some of the other you know, alternatives, if you like, can do better with that by using things like views to kind of show you the data that you're interested in. And then just manual data entry. So, you know, most spreadsheets are going to end up containing some kind of manual error, you know, just by the nature of people. That could be a simple decimal point or transposing errors. You know, we've all seen the icon telling us that on like a sum calculation, you know, there's rows missing from the bottom that haven't been included in the calculation, for example. So just having a think about what are the alternatives that we could use, you know, where we can set some boundaries to say we expect data to be between this and that, or we expect there to be data in here in a certain format. And some of that just kind of error checking, which it doesn't get rid of the problem completely, but it just helps us kind of focus down on the problem and kind of make it a bit easier for users to know what's expected of them to go into certain columns or certain fields. Collaboration as well. So if we look at, there's now multi-authoring on spreadsheets, but there's still some calculations that need to be created by a single user. Again, just back to the point, it's difficult to kind of track and trace those changes in spreadsheets over time, and difficult to keep track of the changes to calculations as well. So some of the kind of common Excel use cases that we see from different customers, things that people are using Excel for that actually, when you start to look at it, are probably better elsewhere with some kind of different system. So some of the most common ones that we see are things like risk registers, lead trackers and tracker type sheets, customer, employee, financial information. So anything that kind of stores information or works its way through a process and passes through various different states is a good candidate for just some of the alternatives that we're going to go on and show you in a minute. We also quite often see spreadsheets kind of being pulled together. So somebody's created a spreadsheet and then somebody's maybe created another spreadsheet, and there's been a decision that actually if we link the two and then start creating macros between the two, then we can come up with a bit of a system. And I guess that's a wee bit of a kind of red flag, if you like, because if you're getting to that stage, then you really should kind of take a step back and have a think, actually, is Excel really what we want it, to be doing here? And maybe start looking at some of the alternatives that we're going to go on and show you to let you be able to see the data more clearly and be able to understand what's happening to the data more clearly, which is probably the more kind of pertinent point, is just understand, if anyone's worked with macros before, they can be a wee bit opaque in terms of the calculations that are going on. We'll see how some of the alternatives, it's a wee bit easier to figure out what the calculation is doing. Okay, and then lastly for just now, just the reporting. So, obviously if you're reporting in Excel, pivot tables need large caches to run, and that actually almost doubles the size of the Excel workbook. So it becomes kind of too big to distribute. So you see people starting to kind of split it up into different spreadsheets, and then you start fragmenting that, and then that gets passed around the organization, and it becomes even more difficult to manage. So we'll show you again later on how you could use something like Power BI to do some more advanced reporting, and that would be either alongside Excel data. So we're not saying don't use Excel, but it could be alongside an Excel data source, or it could be in combination with some other data sources as well. So the last thing is just around that kind of data transfer part. So, there's no kind of API, there's no kind of easy links between some systems, and Excel is quite commonly the middle step, export the data out, format it, edit it, upload it into the new system. Sometimes that can be a good use case, but again, you're open to all the errors that we've talked about earlier on in terms of the transposing. And there are different ways of handling that, using that, and putting some automation in place for there as well. So, I feel like we've given Excel maybe a wee bit of a bashing. We know it's good for some things, everybody uses it. But I just come back to the point about thinking up front about what you need to create and what type of system you're trying to create, and using the kind of right tool for the job. So we're going to have another quick poll just here, just to kind of canvass opinion on what other systems people have tried or people are using instead of Excel. So is that things like SharePoint lists? Is it custom solutions? Is it Power Platform? So hopefully Sopash is typing away furiously at the back there, and you see that poll come up in a minute. So again, just let us know what you're using. Interested to understand what all the attendees are using in their organisations when they're not using Excel. Okay, so a reasonable split. Looks as though there's been it's kind of going as the responses go up. interesting to see the people using Microsoft lists a wee bit more, some custom solutions as well. Obviously a wee bit of Power Platform in there as well. I'll have a look in the chat once I'm finished my section and see what others are coming up here as well, just out of interest. So now I'm going to hand over to Josh, and he's going to take you through some of the Microsoft 365 offerings and how they can be used, either instead of or alongside Excel. So hopefully just give you a wee bit of food for thought on that as well.
Thanks, Graham, and hi everyone. So yeah, I'm just gonna bring the slides up on my screen here. So yeah, we've obviously already talked about obviously Excel and when not to use it and where it is maybe a good use case. So what other obviously alternatives are there within the Microsoft tech stack, and that's kind of what I'm going to be talking through with everyone today. So as a starting point, Microsoft Lists is generally one that most people kind of steer towards. It's relatively straightforward and simple and offers kind of an Excel-like interface for managing data. What we've also got is Dataverse and Azure Data Services, and what you find is as your data starts to get a little bit more complex or a little bit more mature, we might want to look at those two services as they offer a bit more of a kind of comprehensive data platform kind of space for that data. And what you can also do with all of this is kind of wrap it within the Power Platform. So, Power Apps, Power Automate and Power BI to kind of really surface that data and provide more kind of more meaningful insights of it. So obviously you mentioned Microsoft Lists, and I can see in the chat that there's quite a few people that are already using it. So that's really good to see. But for those of you who aren't, Microsoft Lists does offer quite a few capabilities that Excel maybe doesn't do quite as well. So we've got things like filtering. You can filter on columns just like Excel. We've also got views as well, so you can actually almost like group data together. So if you've got, let's say for example, a caseload or cases that you open on a daily basis, and you want to see just what cases have been opened within the past 24 hours, you can create a view to see that, and you can create multiple views for different things to really kind of get a visual of your data quickly and easily. The other kind of big benefit of Microsoft Lists is unique permissions. So you can set permissions on the row level as well to control who can have access to what. So it's a lot more kind of robust and easier to manage from the permission aspect. You've got integration options. So also obviously mentioned the Power Platform, but you can integrate with that easily with data connectors into the data to provide front ends for your data and also reports for that too. Likewise, we've got conditional formatting, so we can make our data within the list look a lot more kind of visual and pretty, which can be really helpful in kind of distinguishing what's what within that list. And lastly, we've got versioning, and this is a really handy feature, which is, in my opinion, far and above beyond what Excel can offer. Is being able to view on a row what has been changed when and by who, so we can see if someone has typed something in error or changed a bit of data, who's done that at what time and what was changed. So it offers a lot more kind of comprehensiveness in that regards as well. So one of the other aspects of lists is how to create them, and I'm going to just bring up a short demo and how that gets done. But it's really flexible in that we can create a list from scratch when we want to create something completely bespoke. We can import from Excel as well, which is really handy if you've already got an existing set of data, and it will help kind of convert that into a list format. Or if we've already got an existing list, we can use that as well. You notice in that screen as well, there's templates that can be used if there's maybe something that matches a use case that you're trying to solve. So I'm just going to share my screen and bring up just a kind of quick demo on how that looks in real terms. So let's do that. Hopefully this shares the right screen. If there's any issues with viewing that, just let me know. But what I've done, I've just got office.com open, and there's multiple ways to get access to lists, and this is just how I do it personally. But we go to office.com and then into lists, and then I'm going to select a new list. And this is that screen we're just showing you on the slide deck there. In this example, I'm just going to open a work progress tracker. And it brings up a preview of what that's going to look like. You can already see how much more kind of visual it can look in comparison to Excel. So I'm just going to select use template here. And I'm just going to name it unique, give it a color and an icon, and just save it. What you'll notice here is when I create a list, I can actually save it to my personal list or to an existing SharePoint site. And then that can be surfaced within the SharePoint site or the Teams site as well if you're using Teams, so you can integrate it. I'm just going to hit create. And you'll see there fairly quickly it's created the template list for me. All my columns are ready, and I can also extend that if I needed to, but it's all ready to go. I'm just going to add a new item here so you can see what that looks like. So when I click new, it brings up a form, and you'll notice it's got all the fields there that correspond to the columns. So if I start filling this in, and then I'll hit save, you will see that be created. And you'll notice as well things like the formatting that gets pulled across and just makes it look a lot more visual. And you'll notice there's all different field types as well. So we've got choices, dates, and I think we've got a person field further down as well. So we can kind of restrict what kind of data is entered. I'm going to save that. When I hit save, you see it's just created the item there, instantly, and then that's it, ready to go. One thing I wanted to show here was comments. So when we create an item, we can actually mark comments on it, and this is really good because I can actually tag users that have access to the list. So in this case, I just tag myself and test and hit send, and that's actually going to send a notification to that user saying that a comment has been added to that list item, with a link to go and view it. So you can really kind of quickly and easily call out users to look at stuff. Another aspect of a list, as I mentioned earlier, was a version control. So just to give you a kind of flavor of what that looks like, if I amend something here and then right click on the item and go to version history, we'll see a full kind of transcript of what's changed. So we see that first one is everything that was created for that row, and then we'll see there what I've just updated for that row, the time and who did it, which was me in this case. So that's kind of a short kind of whistle-stop tour of kind of lists and some of the benefits it brings. So I'm just going to stop share my screen and bring the slide deck back open. So just bear with me a short minute here. And then I'll just need to there we go. So again, mentioned initially that, as we maybe start to kind of increase the complexity of our data, we maybe want something a little bit more robust, or something that's got a little bit more capability. That's where Dataverse can step in. So Dataverse is more your kind of back end kind of SQL-like table structure. It lets us securely manage and store that data, and then we can surface that using business applications, namely Power Platform. So yeah, when we start to get that more complex data, that's where we maybe want to look at Dataverse and creating tables and relationships between those tables. And there's a lot more kind of robustness with the permission aspect as well behind that. So on to the next one, and yeah, as I mentioned as well, the Power Platform, the Power Apps is kind of the solution that's commonly used to surface that data from Dataverse and lists. So Power Apps is a low no code solution for custom app development. It allows makers to develop apps from the ground up, either using kind of canvas apps, which is kind of from scratch, where you have to add all your data and all your buttons and all the app design into it, or via model driven, where it basically designs the app for you, and you then go through and kind of tweak what's shown and what's not, based on what you want to see. The benefit of this is low no code solution, so you don't need to worry about in-depth app development, and you can connect to these systems like Dataverse and Microsoft Lists really easily, and surface and bring that data out. And once it's all ready, just publish it to the business, and that's it, ready to go. So I'm just going to pass on now to my colleague Uma, who's going to go into a little bit more detail on the reporting side with Power BI. So Uma, over to you.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Josh. So one of the challenges you have when replacing Excel with a Power Platform, a SharePoint app, or even a custom application is replacing the reporting functionality. Now, for this, Microsoft have got a very powerful tool called Power BI, and that allows you not only to replicate your reporting that was done in Excel, but also enhance it. It's got various options for connecting to data sources. You can connect to both Microsoft and non-Microsoft data sources, and then very easily be able to start building dashboards, charts, reports, and so on, which I'll also demo some of that stuff in just a minute. Power BI not only allows you to build simple dashboards, but it's also got several AI-driven insight controls as well. And in terms of performance, one of the things Graham mentioned earlier was the older version of Excel has got a limitation of around 65,000 rows. The newer versions of Excel, I think it's just over 1 million rows you can add to those, but with Power BI there's no limitations like that. You can add hundreds of millions and even billions of rows, and it will be super quick. So what I'm going to do now is just switch over to a short demo that I've got for Power BI. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see that. It's worth mentioning Power BI is it has got a free version, and you also don't need to be technical to start using it. So it's not a case that you need to ditch Excel and move to Power BI straight away. You could run both in parallel because there is a free version. So what I've got on screen here is a sales dashboard for a company that sells bikes. Now, using the company data and the visualizations that Power BI offers, users of the report can very quickly see what's happening within the organization and why it's happening. Power BI comes with several different types of visualizations that will allow you to spot trends and take actions based on those trends. So on screen here you can see that I've got a variety of visualizations. There's bar charts, there's column charts, there's also a donut over here, and some KPI cards on the right hand side. Now, Power BI is an interactive tool, so when you hover over stuff or you click into it, you will get more information. So what I'll do here is I'll just hover over the sales by year graph onto 2013, and you can see it brings up a bit more information just in terms of what the exact number of sales there are. You can also click onto items. So what I'll do here is I'll click Japan, sales by region chart, and you can see all the other charts update. So they're all kind of interlinked. So you'll notice in the other ones, there's now a highlighted and a non-highlighted section. And again, hovering over this, you'll be able to get the information. So in this example, you can see what the sales in Japan were in 2013 using the highlighted label. One of the other cool features Power BI is being able to drill down into stuff. So again, I'll use the sales by year chart here as an example. What you can do is using the drill or the hierarchy feature, just click that. You can actually drill down into quarters and then months, all the way down to days. So that's quite cool, and it allows you to get just that low level of information if you require it. There's also some filters on the page here that I've got on the right hand side. So if you just wanted to view data for 2013, you could click one of these filters, and all the cards update as well. There's also quite a cool chart here which is stacked, and it will allow you to see categories and subcategories of what's been sold. So in this example, you can see the line total for mountain bikes is listed there, along with the line total for road bikes. Now, I've kind of shown you here a lot of the kind of standard charts that you would also get in Excel, but they might not be as interactive. Some of the stuff that's specific to Power BI are things like this Q&A control. So what you can do here is just start typing in questions and get answers. So I'll just put a question here. So say sales in 2013, hit enter, and you get a value up there. This is quite cool because you can actually start joining stuff onto this. So I'll say Japan, and the value gets updated, and you can just continue building this statement up and ask questions and text format, and you'll get the answers on the KPI card. One of the other cool graphs that you get is actually this map control, which I always find quite good to use. And the bubbles represent the areas where there's been sales, and as you can see, the bigger the bubble, the higher the number of sales. Now, there is in the presentation earlier, what I mentioned was some of the AI capabilities. So I just want to very quickly demonstrate one of those. I'll just reduce the size of this chart here and drop on a tool called Smart Narrative. And as soon as you drop that on, what it does is it takes your dashboard and tries to kind of make sense of it using intelligence. So as soon as I drop that on, you can see it started giving me some insights with, saying sales last year were highest in North America, and how much higher they were than the kind of Pacific area. So it's got various sentences here about the stuff that you can see on the dashboard, and I think this is quite cool. It will give you insights, things you might not just see by looking at the dashboard. One other thing that I wanted to mention was just around how quick it is to display charts on this, and you also don't need to be technical. So what I'll do is I'll drop on a bar chart here, and let's just use the territories. And I'll drag on the number of sales. And you can see this data set that I've got has currently got hundreds of millions of rows in it. So you can see how quickly that is displayed, this chart. And if you were doing something similar in Excel, I think as soon as you got close to the limits of a million rows, then you would struggle trying to get things to render this quickly. And this can easily be changed as well to a pie chart or some of the other charts that we've got. So just before I kind of finish up on the demo, just a couple of additional things to point out. When it comes to connecting to data sources, you get a whole host of options in here, both Microsoft and non-Microsoft. I think almost all databases are there, and you also get some of the kind of popular CRM systems and SaaS systems out there, such as SurveyMonkey and so on. It's also quite easy to alter the design on these. So if I go to the view, and I'll just get the drop down, if you want a different theme, you can just click. I just chose the one I had, but I'll click City Park, and it's very easy to change the look and feel, and you can also build your own custom branding for this. And yeah, it's also worth mentioning it is mobile and tablet friendly. So once you build the reports, you can view them on mobile and tablet. And again, the version that I'm using here is the free version. You also get a paid version that allows collaboration. But initially, you might want to use Power BI Desktop, which is free to get you kind of up and running and just investigate what it's about. Okay, so just stop sharing here and go back to the presentation. Yep. Okay, so I had mentioned, reporting in Excel. You can use Power BI to, tackle that problem when you're moving away from Excel. Now, Azure has got a whole host of services that can be used for different things. So what you'll find is when you move away from Excel, it won't just be Power Platform or Power BI that you use. It'll be some of the other Azure services as well. So, if you're working with analytics and IoT data, Excel doesn't really cater for that sort of stuff, but you do get services in Azure that will be very strong when it comes to dealing with analytics and IoT data. Also, storage, you get a whole host of options around storage. And when you see this sort of chart for the first time, it can be overwhelming. But Microsoft have got lots of different reference architectures on their website that will help you make the decisions that you need when porting from Excel to a more kind of Azure cloud based approach. Okay, so I'm now going to just hand back to Graham to conclude the presentation.
Thanks, Emma. So I just try to type a response in the chat here as well to Callum. So yeah, just wanted to cover a couple of case studies that really kind of, I guess, show the journey that we've had with some customers to take what was a very Excel based process, you know, and move that on to something that's a bit more kind of enterprise based, something that's a bit more kind of fit for purpose for the solution. So the first one really was our customer White Mackay. So they had a process around new product innovation, and that was very much based on, you know, spreadsheets and going through the different parts of the process. What we did with that one was effectively moved that onto Power Platform. So we used Power Apps and Power Automate, and we're using Dataverse, which you know, Josh had touched on earlier, to effectively put all that information into an application that goes through a series of guided steps and takes you through the process of creating a new product and going through. So the way to think about that is, you know, you go through and create a new product and somebody has to go away and figure out what it's going to cost, you know, to make that product, how many of that product you think you can sell, and whether you think that's a viable product to bring to market. So it goes through those different stages, and then it goes into the whole kind of design and manufacture of the product as well. So kind of step-by-step solution, and what that meant was using Power Platform. We're using a Canvas application there, so we're able to have a view where people can type in you know, certain values, and we can say, well, actually that's not a relevant value because we're expecting it to be between this and that, or that's not the right type of data because we're expecting that to be a number, or we're expecting that to be text. So we're able to do quite a lot of checking that you wouldn't be able to do if you were using a spreadsheet. The other thing is that it can be used by multiple people at the same time. So maybe different teams are using it to pull together different parts of the process, and they can all be using it at the same time, which would be slightly, you know, not impossible with a spreadsheet, but just, you know, slightly more difficult. So it just brings a more kind of robust solution together for the process, and they are seeing some real kind of efficiencies using that as well. And then our second case study is to do with Edrington, so looking at their cask tracking process. So previously they were tracking all the casks that they use for holding their whiskey on spreadsheets. They obviously have locations all over the world, and so they were using different spreadsheets for different locations. And really what they wanted to try and do was get a bit of a handle on how could they get a single kind of unified view of this, and how could they report on that as well. So we worked with them to, in this case, to build a custom .NET application. The reporting is delivered using Power BI, but it was a custom kind of .NET application with a bit of a mobile slant to it as well, to allow them to use it within kind of work, the warehouses, cooperages and things like that. Some of the work conditions that they have mean that they need like what they call ATEX tablets, so tablets that are you know, kind of approved for use, if you like, within these types of environments. So what that gave them was, it gave them a single system that they could see for the first time, you know, where are these casks sitting, you know, are they full, are they empty, what does that history look like, you know, what have they been filled with, have they been repaired across their life cycle, you know, when were they created at the start, and that's really given them a good insight to kind of end to end where all these casks are. And it was quite a you know, they were making quite an investment in those casks, and still are. And at the time where we started, they were effectively just tracked on spreadsheets, and they didn't really have a good handle on where they are. Now they're able to kind of pull up a Power BI report and see where all the casks that they put their investment into are, and how many of them are being used, how many of them are being repaired, and where the other ones are sitting, for example, as well. So that's another good example of one that's come from a spreadsheet to a system that people have found that they've managed to get much better use out of, and just be able to get that information out and get that understanding out as well that they were looking for. So that kind of brings us to the end of our session today. There's been a couple of questions in the chat. I've been trying to kind of keep up to date and keep those answered the best I can. Are there any additional questions that anyone has? Feel free to, I think you can possibly come off mute, or if you want to put your questions in the chat, then we can discuss them as well. I think the last one going back to was Callum. I was trying to type that a bit quickly just before I went back on to present there, but he was just asking, is there any concerns with using the free version with secure data, so medical records, for example? He's just making the point that the free version has technically the same capabilities as the paid for version, but when you move into the paid for version, then you start to get things like role-based security, because the paid for versions start to separate out the delivery of the data versus the kind of presentation of the data as well.
Yeah, it's also with the paid versions, there's a lot more you can do in terms of collaboration. So you can share reports and so on, and also kind of restrict access. With the free version, it's really for building reports on your own machine and using them on your own. But if you want to start collaborating, you want to start investigating the paid versions.
So you see a question there from Stephen. So he's currently using Excel to maintain a new business register, help you keep track of new investments, etc. So are you saying a Power App could be designed and that could go to a SharePoint list? So yes, it could be. I think it comes down to a wee bit of the business scenario, but if you have quite a strong kind of set of stages, if you like, then that works quite well for a Power App, is to kind of take you through, right, stage 1, fill out this section of information, stage 2, fill out this bit of information, and basically guide that all the way through. And that could go into a SharePoint list if that was appropriate. It could go into Dataverse. It could go to, you could use Excel as part of that. But what that would allow you to do is that would allow you to then, report on things like, well, where am I in the process? So how many customers do I have at, kind of stage 1, if you like, versus how many customers I've got at stage 3, and just keep that kind of overall track of everything as well. Okay, another one is Power BI useful for producing management accounts, or is it more for top level reporting? So that's an interesting one. I guess that would depend on how you're doing your management accounts just now, because you certainly could use Power BI to create some kind of KPIs, possibly if you're using KRIs as well, use some get those kind of indicators, if you like, for your management accounts. But again, it just comes back to where does that information sit just now? Are you able to, if that sits in Excel and you were able to just put Power BI on top of that and pull that data out, then that's ideal. You might find that you have to take Excel and maybe another couple of data sources and combine them all together, and that's possible as well. Power BI can pick up from multiple data sources and then pull relationships and data together. So if you have the data sitting there, then it is possible to to pull that together and create some kind of dashboard for your management accounts. Absolutely.
Okay, I think that's everything in terms of questions. If you've got any last minute questions coming in, I think there's one from Stephen there as well.
Great. Oh, there's quite a few now. They're all fired in there. Right, okay.
Oh, that's
So
got 5
using
minutes. Okay, I've got a couple of minutes.
Teleflow is a CRM tool for reports. So is this benefit to first? Yeah, so I mean that CRM tool, I can't have not. It's not one that I know of, so I can't kind of comment on what what could be possible. But certainly, we could help you have a look and see if that is there an export that you can get from there, or even APIs that you could pull that data out and then combine that with other data sources so that you can get different reports, Stephen. So yeah, we could help you have a look at that as well. Yeah, Graham, so yeah, it's a good point. There are lots of options and each of their pros and cons. If the data volumes are large, then yeah, that does suit some kind of database rather than XLS or lists. I think knowing when to do that, so you either if you, I guess what I was saying earlier is just kind of right tool for the job. So if you think, right, before you start a new kind of Excel spreadsheet, it's almost like taking a step back and going, right, see, before I jump in and just do this in Excel, how large do I think this is going to get? What's the kind of demand for this? What's the kind of data volumes that I can expect for this? It's not going to work for you in all cases, because sometimes you just jump straight into it. I've got 5 minutes, I'll create a spreadsheet, and then you get to a point where at some point later on you're going to need to decide actually that's too big for a spreadsheet. But I think just taking that step back and then going, right, should I spend a wee bit more time up front before I just jump in and create a spreadsheet to do something else? That kind of sense check, if you like, will help you then say, right, do I need something that's a bit more Dataverse, Azure, or SQL Server, something that's a bit more robust? There's obviously pros and cons of that, because you'll need to then think that through a bit more. You can't just kind of go and create an Excel spreadsheet. But if you think about the things that we talked about earlier on with the errors, transposing, the data processing, the time taken up front, kind of offsets some of those problems as well later on. So I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's the kind of checks that I would advise before you before you kind of jump in and just create a spreadsheet. Okay, a few other ones in there that I think Graham's added some other information in there around Excel horror stories that if anyone wants to read, they can have a look at that.
Yeah,
I think Umar's picked up some of the other ones, so yeah, that's probably us. So yeah, so thanks very much everybody for their attendance today. I'll hand you back over to Zopas just to round that up.
Yeah, it was just a quick thank you again to everybody for joining us today. We hope you found the presentation useful. Just a quick note again, we will be sending out the slides and the recording after the session. Just wanted to say another huge thank you to Graham, Josh and Umar for really insightful presentations, and the questions that have been coming in as well. Thank you so much for getting involved. We also do have another event coming up soon, so I'll put some details about that in the chat afterwards as well. Yeah, but thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Bye.